In recent weeks, an unusual headline caught the world's attention: India reaching out to China. Despite decades of mistrust and even deadly border clashes, New Delhi sent top officials to Beijing for high-level talks. This comes at a time when India's relationship with Washington is strained. Disputes over trade tariffs, technology restrictions, and its refusal to fully align with United States positions on Russia's war in Ukraine. At the same time, something else is happening across Asia. China, Russia, and North Korea are moving closer together. Military pacts, arms transfers, and public shows of solidarity. Add India's cautious engagement with Beijing and a bigger question emerges. Are we witnessing the birth of a new axis in Asia, and could this become the biggest challenge to America and its allies? Let's begin with China and Russia. Since the invasion of Ukraine in 2022, their partnership has entered a new phase. Trade between the two hit $240 billion in 2023, a record high. Russia now sells the bulk of its oil and gas to China at discounted rates, after being cut off from European markets. In return, China supplies everything from cars to consumer electronics, keeping parts of Russia's economy afloat. A key piece of this partnership is energy pipelines, the Power of Siberia. One pipeline launched in 2019 delivers Russian gas directly to China, already moving 22 billion cubic meters annually. Now both sides are negotiating Power of Siberia 2, a much larger project that could deliver 50 billion cubic meters a year through Mongolia. But here's the catch. Talks have dragged on for years. China is demanding lower prices, knowing Russia has few other buyers. This shows the imbalance. Russia may call China a partner, but in reality, it is increasingly a junior partner, dependent on Beijing's terms. Now let's turn to Russia and North Korea. In 2024, Moscow and Pyongyang signed a mutual defense pact, which is honestly their strongest deal since the Cold War. Almost right away, reports started to surface about North Korea shipping millions of artillery shells and short-range missiles to Russia. These weapons were later linked to strikes in Ukraine. And, satellite imagery even showed North Korean cargo ships docking at Russian ports under, pretty tight secrecy. For North Korea, the benefits here are, pretty clear: food, fuel, and diplomatic protection. Kim Jong-un's regime, which had been isolated for years, suddenly found itself valuable again. For Russia, these supplies are lifelines, really helping to sustain its grinding war effort. Unlike the slow progress of pipelines, this partnership is already, reshaping battlefields. Then we have China and North Korea. This relationship is a lot older, stretching all the way back to the Korean War, when Mao Zedong actually sent troops to save the regime. Today, China accounts for over 90% of North Korea's trade, supplying fuel, food, and consumer goods. Without Beijing, Pyongyang's economy would, basically collapse. But the partnership is, uneasy. China sees North Korea as a buffer state that prevents United States troops in South Korea from sitting right on its border. Yet Kim Jong-un's constant missile tests and nuclear ambitions often create crises Beijing would really rather avoid. In other words, North Korea is both China's shield and, honestly, its headache. Now let's step back and look at India. Many in Washington had hoped India would become a key ally to counterbalance China. But India's foreign policy tradition is, strategic autonomy. It buys discounted oil from Russia, refuses to condemn Moscow at the United Nations, and resists United States pressure on sanctions. Meanwhile, frictions with Washington have grown, especially over visa policies, trade tariffs, and restrictions on technology transfers. This explains why India recently sought dialogue with Beijing, but, history weighs heavily here. In 1962, India and China fought a brief but brutal war over their Himalayan border, leaving thousands dead and relations shattered. Tensions resurfaced in 2020, when soldiers from both sides clashed in the Galwan Valley. The fighting left 20 Indian soldiers and at least 4 Chinese troops dead, the bloodiest border conflict in 45 years. Those memories are still, pretty fresh, which is why India's outreach to China may be pragmatic, but honestly, deep trust is unlikely. India continues to strengthen ties with the United States, Japan, and Australia through the Quad Alliance, even while it hedges by talking to Beijing. And then there's Pakistan, China's longtime all-weather friend. Through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or CPEC, Beijing has pledged over $60 billion in infrastructure projects, highways, railways, and energy plants designed to link Pakistan's ports with Western China. The deepwater port of Gwadar, for example, is meant to give China direct access to the Arabian Sea, bypassing the Strait of Malacca. But problems are everywhere. Many CPEC projects are stalled by security threats from insurgents, financing shortages, and Pakistan's ongoing economic crisis. Chinese workers in Pakistan have even been targeted in attacks, forcing Beijing to reconsider how much risk it will take. Still, Pakistan remains strategically important to China, especially as a counterweight to India. So what does this new axis really amount to? It isn't a formal alliance like NATO, there's no joint command, no single ideology, but even loosely coordinated, these countries are already reshaping geopolitics. North Korean weapons keep Russia's war in Ukraine going. Chinese markets give Moscow and Pyongyang a lifeline. Russia's veto power at the United Nations shields both North Korea and China from accountability. And now, India's diplomatic balancing complicates Washington's ability to build a united front in Asia. The threat, then, isn't total unity, it's disruption. The United States, Japan, and Europe now face adversaries who don't need to march in lockstep to cause damage. They just need to move in the same direction. For Washington, the challenge is not confronting a monolithic Cold War-style bloc. It's dealing with overlapping partnerships that weaken sanctions, prolong wars, and stretch American resources across multiple theaters at once. The bottom line is this: the world is watching the rise of a loose but dangerous alignment in Asia. China, Russia, North Korea, and even India's cautious outreach to Beijing signal a shifting balance of power. Not a perfect alliance, but a convergence of interests, often in direct opposition to the United States and its allies. So, is this really the birth of a new Asian axis, or just a fragile partnership of convenience? And more importantly, how should America respond? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into global geopolitics.